As I said, as a sport, I've already touched on the challenges facing the sport. This is my introduction, really. Less numbers, the weather, which always causes trouble, funding, costs of all sorts of things, such as medical, the toilets, whatever. Other things to do for people. There's, of course, lots going on all the time as far as administration of point-to-pointing, but to keep the sport moving forward. And as I've said several times this morning, people are always working extremely hard to take things forward. In addition to our paid officers, lots of volunteers giving their best and lots of time. We are all here because we love point-to-pointing. We're all enthusiasts, we're all supporters, and we all want the best for our sport. And that's the same for everybody who sat at this end and you in the audience. But I brought this forum together to give you the opportunity not only to hear from the forum members, but also to ask questions and bring forward your constructive ideas and comments that we can all take forward. We're not going to make any decisions today. We've got probably lots of things to take away, but this will give everybody a chance to express their views and hopefully some good ideas. So before I introduce the forum, can I ask you keep your questions and your comments to the point and don't and as short as possible, and I will stop you if you are going on for too long. And can you also just remember that we are all on the same team, that we all want to work together. Please be respectful of others in what you say, because we all love this sport and we all want to take it forward. So to the forum. 4 great men of pointing to answer, comment and guide. If we counted up the hours they give to your sport, you would be amazed. All, I think, are lifetime point-to-point enthusiasts. Andrew Merriam, Chair of the PPA, having previously sat on the board representing the Jockey Club. In the distant past, he was Chairman of the Point-to-Point Secretaries Association, and his wife Jean has trained point-to-pointers and was a fixture secretary. Son Alex obviously rode in point-to-points, and Andrew has been heavily involved with both the Jockey Club and the BHA for many years, and therefore brings much to the party in point-to-pointing as he comes around again for another term in office. Alan Hill. Alan needs no introduction, but he represents the MFHA on the PPA board. He's a pretty good rider in his day, and he's recently trained, I think, his 300th winner, is that right?
Yes.
So well done to you, Alan. And his family are steeped in pointing with son Joe and wife Lorne, the greatest enthusiasts. Alan is also a key player in keeping Kingston's Lunt running, so absolutely, completely steeped in point-to-pointing. Nick Sutton is an independent member of the PPA board and chair of the newly formed fixture committee, and he spent a stint of part of last year being chair of that PPA board. He's a former successful rider, brother of Tracy Bailey, and has father of 2 sons who have been riding in point-to-points. But he brings so much to the party with his experience in business. And last but no means least, David Minton. David is chair of the Race Planning Committee, successful bloodstock agent and friend and mentor of many a trainer. He was a great commentator, I believe, in the East Anglia, although I never heard him, and is involved with Philip Rowley's successful point-to-point yard in Shropshire. And like all the others, he's had a lifetime passion for point-to-pointing. So that's your panel. Now I'm going to first of all ask each of them a question, and then we're going to bring you in. So we're just going to ask one question, and they've been told that they have to keep their answers to the point as well. So it's a fair cop here. So we're going to ask them a question, and then we'll do the 4 questions, and then we'll open questions to the floor. Andrew, can you just say numbers of horses and riders are falling? What are your thoughts on this?
Right. Well, as many of you know, horse numbers are falling, and in the current season they're down 7% year on year, and rider numbers down 11%. And that continues a long-term trend, and if you look over the last 10 years, interestingly, both horse numbers and rider numbers are down by 32%, which is an enormous figure, but it sort of the rider figure sort of tracks the horse figure. Well, why, and what can we do about it? Well, as to why, I have no special insight, but I think there are a combination of things, and I'm sure all of you will have some ideas as well, which we can debate. First, I think it's more and more difficult for small amateur owners with a couple of horses to be competitive. There are more and more horses are professionally trained, and so the cost of having a horse professionally trained with a point-to-point trainer is very much the same as it would be to have a horse trained by a small trainer under national hunt rules. And, of course, there is very limited VAT refund, whereas you would get, with sponsorship, a full refund for your rules trainer. So the cost, really, of having a horse in point-to-point and a horse under rules is now very much the same. And you can accuse me of being partly responsible, but the BHA, the law of unintended consequences, have perhaps not helped point-to-pointing by introducing a number of measures aimed at the grassroots of rules racing, which is moving prize money and appearance money down to 8th place, so that you can, with a 0 to 95 handicapper, you can win £350 for turning up and finishing 8th at your Topseter, which is probably definitely more than you would probably win to win an open point-to-point. Now, for me, prize money isn't the key issue, but it may be for some people. So there's that. I think that people are generally busier, and staff costs are rising, and staff are more difficult to come by. And I think there are more and more other ways for people to spend their, I thought I'd never hear myself say this, but leisure pound. And finally, I think there is a reflection of a trend which is being seen under rules of a lack of young owners and breeders of jumpers. And there are a lot of new owners coming into racing who want rather more instant gratification by having an all-weather horse. Those are some ideas as to why. And we weren't only told to be concise, we only had 2 minutes, and I'm going to have the second minute on what can we do about it. Well, I think
you've had your 2 minutes, so very, very quick.
Well, I think I promised to be on the point. I think we can do the following. First of all, I think we need to talk up the sport and promote it, and we may hear more about that today. I think we need to recognise that the dynamics of the sport, whether we like it or not, are changing, and we need to be prepared to think laterally and experiment. Things like encouraging syndication would be a very good example. And above all, we need to look after our owners. If somebody has a horse running this afternoon here at Straford, I don't think they'll have to argue over getting a couple of race cards. And I'm not sure that anyone will expect them to pay for the car park, just to give you 2 very obvious things. So we really should embrace our owners. And if you're a fixture secretary, I think it shouldn't be difficult to get somebody, whether it's your senior steward, to just go around everybody in the paddock and say, you know, it's really kind of you to bring this horse the whole way to Wales from East Anglia, or what's fine, vice versa, it's more likely to be. And just little things like that. End of.
3 minutes.
Sorry,
Right, park those thoughts, everybody. You might want to come back to Andrew on some of those points that you've made. We would welcome points on that. David, there's a lot of discussion on weights, particularly for 4-year-olds. You put out a paper last week, but if it is your rationale, what's your rationale for keeping the existing weight regime, and how do you see it going forward? 2 minutes.
I'm going to be very brief, thank you, because we're tied by the BHA rules, weight for age, which Richard Russell, are you here yet? He's not here, but I'd rather get him to explain it, because he knows more about weight for age than anybody. I mean, we are ruled by the BHA rules, and I agree, it is a lot of weight for 4-year-olds to get, but they have not dominated the maiden races at all, as you've read in the paper, hopefully. We are quite keen to think about 4- and 5-year-old maidens to raise the weights up, which would help enormously, and this will be discussed at the next meeting in July. Other than that, as I say, it is a major bone of contention. It doesn't help when you get Willie Munnin saying, well, he only carried 10-7, but they're still buying the horses, and it is the commercial side. And also a lot of people now running in the 3 mile ones rather than the 2.5 mile junior ones. That's very noticeable, especially Tom Lacey seems to be running more in the 3 mile ones and ducking the 2.5 mile maidens. So anyway, I know there's 1 or 2 people who I get quite a lot of earache off here about the weight for age, but we are tied by the BHA rules of, which have been in, as Richard Russell will tell you when he speaks about it, I'm going to get him to speak about it, he will say, Lord Rouse brought it in 17, whatever it was. It can be changed, things can change, and we can try and vary it all. But at the moment, as I said, 5-year-olds are holding their own, and 6-year-olds are holding their own against the 4-year-olds in the maidens.
Again, park that, guys, and we'll come back to it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll come back to it in a minute. Who have I got next? Nick. Why the need for the fixture list committee, and what are you hoping to achieve from it?
I ask myself that question every day. Look, I mean, in this sport, there's an awful lot that isn't broken, and that includes the fixture list. It generally has evolved over time to be a reasonably satisfactory geographical spread and calendar spread. Having said that, everybody in this room will be well aware of what we call the sort of bank holiday or Easter bulge. And you know, that has always been the case. It's a time when fixtures can make a lot of money, but we do have a diminishing horse population, we do have a diminishing rider population, and if we seek to stretch that over 21 fixtures over a weekend, you inevitably are going to turn up and get some relatively small fields and possibly some poor racing. I don't think that serves our sport particularly well. I don't think it's a great advertisement. However, some people will say people come point-to-point racing to not even bother looking at a horse. That is true in some cases. So it's really about tinkering at the edges of it. It's not about trying to change something whole scale, and it's about doing it through incentivization as opposed to, we all know in this sport, anybody that has a role to play in it, if you tell somebody to do something, they simply won't do it. You have to let them evolve the idea and move forward themselves. So that's what I'm hoping to achieve. We had a very good meeting. We've got an excellent team that sits on the fixture list committee, all of whom bring a significant amount of skill, information, knowledge, and foresight to it. We had our first meeting earlier this year. We had our second meeting. We've already made recommendations to the PPA board, which were accepted unanimously, and that was to try and move financial support to early fixture meetings, i.e. pre-January, because that was an area that was at significant risk of basically disappearing, for want of a better expression. So I believe that we've moved swiftly, and hopefully we will have made our first positive impact.
2 minutes. Done. Alan, can you update us on centralisation of hunt subscriptions and the procedures for next year?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This decision was not taken quickly. It has been the MFHA point-to-point committee's discussion for many seasons. And it was decided then to send a survey out, questionnaire, to every hunt. There were 189 hunts that were sent this survey. Either the chairman and or the senior master got it and were encouraged to go to their point-to-point committee as well as their hunt for their findings. They were all asked and were chased up to return this survey, of which 108 hunts did. The results of this survey were 74 were in favour, 34 were not in favour, which in percentage 68.5, 31.5. We then had a full point-to-point MFHA meeting in London to discuss this. A long meeting with a unanimous decision to take forward central collection. How do we pay? not a lot's going to change. You go to your nominated hunt, you get a signed hunter certificate by the authorised signature from that hunt. You still register that hunter certificate with Weatherby's, but with it, we have set a fee of £160 per horse. That will be collected by Weatherby's, and they will pass that money on to the MFHA hunting office, who will then distribute that money to the nominated hunt that you have put on your certificate. There is no charge by either the hunting office or Weatherby's for this service, contrary to rumour.
Yes.
The reason that the committee took this view, and a lot of the people returning their surveys, was it was felt too many deals were being done that was causing bad feeling between hunts. So that's why we have taken that decision.
Thank you very much, Alan. Except for the chairman, who will give chairman prerogative for to you. You were all 2 minutes. I didn't know you.
This is very deceptive.
Good. Right, I'm going to open it up now to you guys. What I'd also like to do, if we have a question and it is on hunter certificates or whatever, then I would like to keep to that that topic. If you have other, before we move on to something else. So I want to keep to one topic before we move on to a new topic, if I possibly can, and then not come back to that topic that we've dealt with. So who would like to kick us off? Jerry Coward.
Yorkshire, obviously.
He is going to come round with
There's still a lot of people in Yorkshire against the centralisation because we do unseen work for them, that we have our power sub, and then you get your certificates. What happens if you want to go in more than one hunt race, for example, and they're in one dedicated hunt, because you can run in more than one. We do, but some people do. So what happens if people from out of the area want to be in your hunt, want to run in their hunt race? So your nice big hunt cup, for example, the B-Deal the other year, went down to some randomer you don't know. How do you know you're going to go back? How do you know who they are? The idea of these hunt races is for your local people to run it.
Alan, can you explain how this will work?
You know, there's so many more people against it in Yorkshire. I bet the percentages that Yorkshire didn't want it was all the percentage that didn't want it. Because they went to the masters, and 90% of the masters have got a clue about pointing, they just want the money. Raise the money, say it to us, we'll use it for hunting.
Alan.
Because ours wasn't, because somebody let us know. You know.
Alan.
Right, I'll start off with, can you have more than 2 certificates? Yes, you then just pay a second subscription, so that's bringing money into hunting. Secondly, quite a few hunts this year in the planner have put their own stipulations in for the horse to have been hunted 4 times with that hunt, or the jockey to have ridden out hunting with that hunt. We're not saying that can't be done, so if you want to keep your hunt race to your local community, put those stipulations in. I encourage you to do it. We had the same at the Kimberwick. Our jockeys must have hunted with the hunt. So that then will stop the man going away with your cup. I don't know whether he's going to come and do that or not. I can't answer that question. But all I'm saying is, if you go to your point-to-point fixture committee and say, please, will you put these conditions into your race, that will help keeping it to your locals.
That's if they remember to do it all. Not everybody does that.
That I can't answer.
And it's getting further away from hunting again, because they're sending the money into whether it's by
You can speak into the microphone.
via MHA, come back again. It's all a big circle when the hunt did it for nothing. You know, but you're not going to charge, supposedly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, hello, how many years down the line is somebody's doing all this work? You're going to charge eventually, because everybody does. Nobody does it for nothing. Apart from the hunt treasurer, because that's
this
what
has been set up by Weatherby's. The MFHA have taken the charge of having the set-up with Weatherby's. For the first 3 years, this has been set up. It's a 3-year trial period. They have said that with the set-up period, there will be no charge by Weatherby's for handling this money.
Ilona.
I don't need I don't think I need
Go on, yes you do.
Alan, can you just confirm that if somebody wants to take out a second registration that they have to pay the full price, £160?
They do, yes, they have to pay for the second subscription to that hunt. and the registration of the hunter certificate.
So, guys, if we can keep to the hunt subscription topic for the time being, and we'll deal with that, and then over here.
Sorry, is that the only? I'm from the.
If you give your name.
Jonathan Turner from the Wednesday Hunt. Our subscriptions from Point to Points are down by £2,000 next season because of the decision. We agreed to go along with it for good appointing, but I think the unfortunate thing is there doesn't seem to be any control over the hunt in where in the area the owner lives necessarily getting the benefit.
That is correct. That was discussed, whether a person that lives in a hunt should nominate that hunt, or whether a person that lives in the area of Point to Pointing should stay in that area. But it was felt at the committee that a person has a freedom of choice. So we can't put a stipulation in like that, because if you live in London, you don't live in a hunt or an area. So it is up to the person to nominate their hunt that they want to go to. The opposite way was had as well, that hunts that do not hold a point-to-point, it was discussed, shouldn't be able to issue hunter certificates. But then again, if you're Mr. Smith and you know your hunt needs a new hunt horse, why shouldn't you give that £160 to your local hunt as regards another hunt? So that again was discussed.
Yeah, Tim Garton.
Hi, Tim Garton. I've got a question concerning the money that goes into the central collection. I've got no problem with central collection. My thought is that point-to-pointing is struggling, the costs are very onerous, the people are amateurs. Therefore, if I've got nothing against every hunt being able to issue a certificate, but only those hunts that actually put on a point-to-point should benefit, and therefore when the money goes centrally into the MFHA, they should only give it back to those, or divide it amongst those hunts that hold a point-to-point. So if you have a hunt to point-to-point, you get all the money. If you don't hold a point-to-point, that money gets pulled and gets dished out amongst those hunts that do hold point-to-points. Otherwise, we're going to be like the Titanic. We're going to sinking, drinking champagne.
I think I've just answered that by saying that if you live in a hunt, though that hunt may not hold a point-to-point, you will want your money to go to that hunt, even though they don't hold a point-to-point. Why shouldn't it go to your local hunt if you want to finance and help your local hunt?
Well, just give them their money anyway. £160 is nothing. So if you want to have a hunt subscription, then you just give an extra 160 quid. I don't think for people having horses, that's a big deal. We're out to support point-to-pointing. We're not to support those hunts that don't hold point-to-point. So if somebody is a keen hunting person, then they should just give an extra 160 quid.
Down here, I think looking at when Tim was saying that, Alan, there were quite a few nods around the room. I think the MFHA should take that away at the end of the day.
Gillian B. Alan knows that I've always asked these questions. I'm totally against centralisation. I'm a person who has one or two horses, but I like to hunt. I'm probably in the minority these days because people don't like to hunt the point-to-pointers, but I do. Now, Alan said this has been brought in to stop backroom deals. Now, I'm going to have to do a backroom deal with my hunt. Otherwise, it's going to cost me £320 to register 2 certificates plus a hunting subscription. And I know our treasurer, who is the mother of a point-to-point jockey, and they hunt their own horses. She said that it's going to be a nightmare for her organising money for the hunt. The trouble is with a lot of these decisions that are made, they're made across the country, and what works in the south does not always work in Yorkshire. And we don't want it. We know we're going to have it, but we don't want it.
Other questions? We're going to come back to other. Any other questions on hunting situations?
Jeff Barfoot's on. Alan is aware of, I think, what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it out loud. Not all people obtain their certificates, pay their subscriptions by money changing hands. Lots of people do lots of things without which their local hunt couldn't carry on, as you find things very difficult to carry on. Whether it be providing straw, work at the kennels, machinery to put on events, various things, car parking spaces for hunting during the winter. There are lots of things which happen. And to suddenly tell everybody who has a pointer, you've got to pay money, means that they are going to be disinclined to give quite so much of their time and effort and materials towards their local hunt. So it is interfering with local, very localised politics in each individual hunt. To say that the money is going to come back is fine, but it just leaves a sour taste in the mouth of the bloke who's spending a week a year driving a tractor, for example, for the hunt, that now he's got to pay money as well. Even though it might come back, it's just leaving a sour taste from a localised political point of view.
Alan, do you want to answer those couple of questions?
Yeah, I take on board what you're saying. The MFHA point-to-point committee are reviewing this situation, and there may be in that review a dispensation of certificate that comes out for the farmer or landowner. It has been discussed, and it will be discussed again. Having been a master myself for 20 years, I totally take on board the uncharged for help that hunts have, and this will be, obviously, some people will feel upset by it. But having sat in this meeting and heard that last year there were nearly 2,500 horses, and some people were getting deals as low as £20, £50 a ticket, we felt that hunting had still somehow or other got to get money back and to cut out these deals being done. And this is the trial period of 3 years of why this is being brought in. So whatever comes in new probably will upset some people. We don't want to do that, and we will revisit it, but we had to do something to stop this continuing.
Perhaps I can see, but can you not see that this is a little bit of a case of the tail wagging the dog? Whatever you bring into place, somebody somewhere will take the mickey. Somebody somewhere will turn it on its head. Whatever the rule, whatever the doesn't matter if it's racing or anything else. If you put a rule in place, somebody somewhere is going to mess with it. But you surely cannot upset the majority just for the minority.
You say majority, but we had the survey back and it was 68.5 against 31.5. So we're not upsetting the majority. Every hunt had their survey to fill in and return. So we've also listened to those that took the time and effort to send the survey back. And as Tim Easby said, that the hunting office rang every hunt that had not sent their survey back to give them the chance so we could gain all the information. If we had gone and the other way and ignored it, other people in this room who favour it would have said, why did you ignore a survey that said 68.5% people want it? So it is a difficult one, but we went very much listening to this survey. Everyone was asked, every hunt was asked.
I'm going to come back to the audience in a minute. Members of the panel, do you have anything to say, or are you quite happy to leave this to Alan?
All yours.
I want to wrap this one up, so I'm going to ask for any one or two more comments before we go on to another. Robert Whaley Cohen.
Robert Whaley Cohen, wearing on this occasion my credentials as chairman of a point-to-point for previous 39 runnings. I have to say I disagree with what Alan said in relation to the MFHA allowing hunts to collect money and not run a point-to-point. We're a point-to-pointing association. We ought to be encouraging every hunt to have run a point-to-point and not to collect money and not run a point-to-point. We should say, sorry, if you don't run a point-to-point, you don't collect any money from qualifying horses.
Lornie Hill. Watch out, Alan.
Of the 189 surveys, the hunts that you sent, it was 189 of them. How many hunts did not return their surveys?
We received 108 back.
So those people, a lot of hunts did not bother returning their
Yeah.
surveys.
They did not bother, and they were chased up.
And final comment from Nick Bostock.
Yeah, well, the easy
Hold on,
way,
Nick.
from what I can
Hold
see,
on, Nick.
the easy way from what I can see is that if you have a pointer and you want your money to go to a hunt that's stated to point, then you qualify with that hunt. So it's in everybody's hands in this room to ensure that the money goes where they want it to go.
I agree with you, Nick.
I'm going to move on to other topics, actually, because we've done 15 minutes on that topic. It will be something that will be debated again and again over the next season. We will see how it goes. It was a difficult decision for the MFHA, but I think that there are quite a lot of members of the MFHA point-to-point committee here today. They will have heard your views, and I'm sure the message from this meeting is, please guys go back and talk about it and think about it and take into account what has been said today, particularly from the north, but more widely as well. So we're going to drop hunt subscriptions and we're going to go on to another topic. Andrew Sanderson.
Thank you. I'd just like to point out from what was said earlier by Andrew Merriam that the participation of horses is down 32% in the last 10 years. And just point out that in Ireland, over the same time, they're down 50% on horses. I think that you brought up about the Barbary meeting not taking place and then looking to support 2 meetings next year, one in the north and one in the south. Would you consider doing 4 and including Wales and Scotland in that?
Shall I deal with that question first? Should we just stop because you've got 2 questions?
Well, no, I think that you don't need to reply. It's just ideas that I have. It was mentioned also that some hunts insist on qualifying, and I see now that they're bringing in a thing for assessment of jockeys before they can ride in a point-to-point. And when I started riding, we had to get a ticket signed by Master of Foxhounds and a licensed trainer, and I think that would suffice.
Andrew, can I stop you there? Because you've made 3 points, and perhaps we can address some of those points now. And if you want to make comments on other things later, we can come back to them. First of all, as far as the where the PPRA will be in supporting meetings, take on board what you said. We've put down the 2. It might be that we do more, but we very much recognise issues in Wales. But it might be Scotland that we support in the north rather than Yorkshire. But we will see. Can I go to perhaps go to Andrew, who's going to talk about your comment about rider numbers and also the rider assessment, and just perhaps some comments on those 2.
I think the rider assessment and rider numbers, as I said earlier, have literally tracked horse numbers, and I don't think that's terribly surprising. The rider's assessment, I think, for me, is quite a simple one. The point authority, which is acting for the British Horse Racing Authority, has one of its most important priorities is equine and human welfare, and I'm quite sure there isn't anyone in this room who would disagree with that. It is a fact that you are almost twice as likely to injure yourself riding the point-to-point as you are riding in a national hunt steeplechase. It is one of the most, I can't give you all the statistics, but they're there. It is one of the most dangerous sports that there is. And therefore it is, forgive me, use an old-fashioned word, beholden on the authority to do everything it can to protect the riders themselves when they start and all the other people who ride from injury. And it seems to me quite right that jockeys that were young riders should be assessed, which they haven't been previously, and we all know that some of them have just got a chip signed by the master. I don't complain about that, that's the way it's always been. But the fact is, it must, I think, be right for riders to be assessed by qualified jockey coaches. Also huge, if I never rode in the point Andy, as you very well know, I was about twice the way before I started. But it must be a huge help to have somebody who a professional, you know, a top jockey, giving you a bit of a help to start off with. And it cannot be right for somebody who is assessed to be incompetent to ride in a point-to-point ab initio. That seems to me to be absolutely fundamental. And it must be right that they, for his or her own safety, hang on a second, his or her own safety and for everyone else's safety, and what is more, for the insurance policies of the people who are running the hunt.
We'll come back to Andrew in a second.
And I mean, for me, it is an absolute no-brainer. And it's funded by the HPLB.
Nick, you brought two boys up through. What's your comments?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think it goes back to the thing where previously all jockeys went out hunting the master, had a good opportunity to assess their ability. That's gone now, we know that. So the master of the hunt is signing off on something that he's got no visibility on. That's got to be 100% wrong. I mean, it could put, you know, a very serious legal situation. When I started riding, there was a fellow rider called Peter Craggs, and Peter just said, "Follow me." And when I came back in, I said, "Do you always go that quick?" And I think nowadays, having you know, having support from jockey coaches, my youngest lad who rode this year has been helped by a chap called Dave Cross, and frankly, he couldn't. My son couldn't ride when he was 15. He rode his first winner, and a lot of that has been down to the jockey coaching that he's received. So I think it's invaluable. I think any senior jockey in this room would probably endorse that.
Andrew Sampson,
Yeah,
we
I
quickly come
would,
back, and then we'll go
but,
to Charlotte Marshall.
Can I just point out that Dave Cross is a very good jockey coach, but a lot of the people at the British Racing School have never ridden in a point-to-point, and it's very different to riding under rules. That's all I'd like to say on that. And just one final point, talking about rider numbers, I would like to see us encourage more owner riders, because I think we've lost a lot of them, and for people who work very hard to pay for their own horse to ride, a lot of them struggle to do 12 stone. So I'd like to encourage more 12 stone 7 races for those sort of people.
We'll come back to that.
Possibly even in adjacent hunts, which I think are better than what we have now in confined races, which are no different to an area members.
Andrew, we'll pick up on that point in a minute. I just want to finish off with rider assessments. I think there's a comment from Charlotte, was it?
Thanks, Charlotte Marshall. I'm the mum of two young, enthusiastic point-to-point jockeys, both of whom wanted to start riding at 16. They're both fairly competent, come up through the hunting field, team chasing, whatever. My concern is that obviously as a mum, I want them to be as competent as they possibly could be when they go down to the start, and I want them to be riding amongst people who are also not dangerous, as much as Andrew's pointed out that it is a dangerous sport. But as a parent, the cost of everything fell to me and my husband. They're 16 years old, they're at school, the entry costs for us, horses, kit, licenses, hunter subscriptions. I'm all for these courses and instruction, but there is any way that they could be sort of helped out with the funding?
The assessment, Charlotte, are paid for.
Yeah.
They're all paid.
They're free.
I mean,
you've got to get yourself there, but they are free.
But is that one-day course at the British Racing School, Andrew?
No.
Because from what Nick was saying, you know, it's not 3 hours that makes a kid into a competent jockey. It's not
a training, it's an assessment.
And it's assessment of the riding ability, assessment of their fitness, it's assessment of their knowledge. I mean, it's generally, you know, a credible jockey's coach will be able to tell whether somebody's capable or not capable of. And I suspect if somebody falls a bit short first time, the recommendation would be to come back, and again, that would be funded. So, you know, this is about us helping people into the sport,
and I'm totally in agreement with that.
not preventing it.
It's just where, you know, in a sport where the costs are spiralling.
I absolutely get that, yeah.
It's yet another cost.
Yeah, but that cost is being absorbed by the BHA.
Your general point about cost, Charlotte, I absolutely agree. And it's something that, one of the things that I hope, and I don't, may have come back for me, can happen is we get a bit more money from the racing authority to fund these kind of things.
Right. I think from the PPRA point of view, it's absolutely essential that we keep these costs down for the jockeys going forward and do everything that we possibly can. and I think we just need to run this through this year and see how it goes, a bit like the hunt centralisation. But we've got to look after our jockeys, not just our first year jockeys, but also our second and third year jockeys, so that we encourage them back into the sport at the end of the day. And that's something that we must look at as generally at board level and at PPRA level. Can I